Good day to you, Year 12. I hope you're all well. I'm recording this presentation before Boris makes his speech, so hopefully he's got some good news for us later on today. This presentation is on UCAS, starting with a bit of history, what we've learned so far, what we should have been doing in terms of our research, then looking at timelines to make sure that we all know exactly what's what. And finally, most importantly at this point, is some guidance on personal statements. So if you want to make some notes, please do. I'm making this presentation in response to a few emails I've had from two of you about just a bit of guidance needed for personal statements. So we're going to focus on that in this little video. This presentation was put to you guys about well over 2 months ago now. It was all about the key information in terms of UCAS applications, and there were some bits about apprenticeships as well. Today I'm just going to be focusing on UCAS. So, a reminder of the timeline. When I made this presentation first time round, I asked you to really get into your research, book in, if possible, any open days before the school closures, and there will be more time to book open days and things like that. There's no substitute really for actually going into the universities and finding out about the courses. We also have had a number of guest speakers. We've done some work in PSHE when we've looked at some career guidance type resources that have helped us to map out what we want to do next and things like that. So the first part of the process really is just fact-finding missions, and slowly but surely you guys will start to see the next steps that are right for you. So first few months really of the whole kind of UCAS journey is about research. It'd be great if we could wave a magic wand and sit down with you and say, what subjects are you doing at the moment? This is exactly what you need to be doing, and you will agree and that sort of stuff. But there's so many variables involved that it's just a case of going to websites, looking at media, videos, going to the universities, and then eventually it will appear for you what is the best thing to do. As level 3 students, everyone should be registering with UCAS and applying. That doesn't mean that you have to necessarily go, but certainly that is the right pathway for the vast majority of people who are doing level 3 courses. So the first part is the research. June, the plan is to register with UCAS, so more information on that to follow, but you can't actually start uploading things like personal statements, and teachers cannot upload their references for you until we've registered with UCAS. So that's going to be something that we need to do in June. July to September, so the first draft, I'll talk about the exact deadline for the first draft of your personal statement, but it will be before the end of term. If you could get them to your form tutor or me well before, we can spend more time looking at it and making suggestions and comments. And then really we can back to you and you can improve it. The first draft before this year, so anyone that has arranged their work experience, and I think I put a message about this in the bulletin, it won't be happening, so I think any employer that's agreed that with you is already assuming that's the case anyway, but can you just make sure that if you have agreed your work experience that you contact the employer, thank them for their offer, but explain that clearly it's not being run now. So once you've done your first statement, your form tutor or me gets a chance to really give you some well thought out feedback, and then you can come up with your best draft so it's ready for submission between September and December. Those people who are applying for Oxbridge universities and medics, the deadline is much sooner than that. It's in October, but for the vast majority of us who are going to be applying for universities, we've got to around December, but we don't want to leave it that late, so we would be hoping that the applications for each and every one of you is pretty much done by the October half term. So the support from the school. Really, this all started at the beginning of March when this presentation was put to you guys through the one of the assemblies that we had, and following on from that, we had a whole session on a Monday where we spent 30 minutes going through some of the ins and outs of this. The next stage really was to do some serious one-to-one support in long registration periods on your personal statements. Now, 23rd of March, well, that was lockdown time, so that hasn't happened. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing this presentation today. And then June is the UCAS registrations. We were planning on going to the University of Bedfordshire for the UCAS event, where lots and lots and lots of universities are represented, and they talk about the courses that they offer, and it gives you a better feel for university life. And then finally, from September, it's a case of getting those applications off. You pick 5 universities in total. So I'm not going to go past this slide on this presentation. This has just got exact deadlines for things. But as you do go through this presentation that you do have, I sent it to you on the 19th of April, if you want to check your email. So you've got this, everything I'm going to show you today, I sent to you on the 19th of April to remind you. But this slide is a good one too, because it just tells you exactly when the first drafts of your personal statement are due. And that it must be done by then, because often first drafts are really bad, but that's a good thing as long as lots of effort's been put in and your teacher can make lots of suggestions for you to improve. The worst situation is a real poor attempt, and then your form tutor or myself, we just don't have enough to work off to make suggested improvements. So that's just some kind of a reminder about research and fact-finding missions to work out what university and courses might be best for you. A bit about the support that the school has given. Mr. Maguire, something I should have mentioned, did the assembly which was on tuition fee loans and maintenance loans to help you understand that the university pathway should be as affordable as possible for everyone, with much of the money borrowed being paid back during your working lives and not before, and only when you reach a certain salary. So Mr. Maguire has gone through that presentation. If you should want it and you can't find the presentation with all the information on personal finance, just send him an email and he'll send that to you. So moving on, also on the 19th I sent you a document which is the personal statement masterclass from UCAS, and I scanned it badly onto the email, but it's good enough for us to work off of. So I'm just going to talk about the creation of your personal statements using this document. So I suggest you do the same, because it comes straight from UCAS. So it's you know, they're the ones who are going to you know, be channeling your applications to the university. They know their stuff, and this is their suggestion. So what I'm focusing on really here is this is the first page, and there is some general information about personal statements, and then when we get to around about here, it starts to talk about the structure, and it says that 70% of your personal statement must be dedicated to your studies. So there's only going to be about a quarter of it where you're actually talking about, you know, you as a person, and you know, what makes you a well-rounded person, and the sorts of things that you're interested in, and the kind of stuff that comes to us more easily, is only going to be about 25% of it. So the let's have a look at the structure. So it starts off with an introduction, and this is a really key paragraph. It's really about your motivation for studying the particular subject stroke course, and then leading on from that, you would go into the sorts of stuff that you've been doing in school, if possible, to evidence the skills and interests that you have that link into this particular course or subject. Following on from that is evidence of your passion for the subject. So this can be more about the sorts of things that you've done outside of school to, you know, go further with this interest that you've got. So, you know, if it was a history course or something, you might talk about some trips that you've been on to particular historic locations, museums. You might talk about particular books or articles that you, or journals that you read, that kind of stuff. So the first part is really quite chunky, and it's looking really at exactly why you're so passionate about the subject. So it's quite broad to start off with, and then getting into what you've done in school and out of school to support that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to look, we're going to stop at that point in terms of the structure and go over to an exemplar. So this was a student's application to one of the Russell Group universities, one of the top 25 universities for maths. And the first paragraph is, so if we just come over to that exemplar. So the first paragraph is going to be an introduction. So if I just, before I even get looking at this first paragraph, if I go to the UCAS guidance again, and if I go down to the first part, so let's zoom in on what makes a good introduction. So there should be things in here about, you know, what was your personal trigger, what got you first of all really interested and passionate about this particular subject. You know, was it, as it says in the text there, was it a museum trip or a documentary or an inspirational teacher? Maybe your personal circumstances, the way that life, you know, started panning out for you, you moved towards a particular interest or something like that. It may be that you knew someone or a friend, you know, introduced you to some aspects of a particular subject, and from there you know started to learn more from reading and so on and so forth. So the first part of a good introduction is you know, what was the trigger, and then it's really good in a introductory paragraph if you can talk about the bigger picture. So how does this particular subject in your mind, how does it fit into how is it significant to the progression of society, those kinds of questions, and how does it fit in to the wider world, and that's really another part of an introduction that's really valuable. Then you can talk about specific areas of interest. So if we stick with history, it might be a particular period of history that's of great interest of you. You know, why is that? And use quotes, not just for the sake of it, but if a particular quote from a particular theorist it will enhance your introduction. So if we just go back to the exemplar, this student attempts to explain their passion here behind choosing maths as a degree. You could read through it. I would actually say this isn't the best introduction in the world, but there is an attempt to try to tick some of the boxes that we can see on the UCAS guidance. So let's just okay, so that's the introduction. If we just go back now to the kind of format, the structure, now it's on to talking about sort of in schools evidence of skills and interests, and how this passion for the subject has been taken further outside of the school. So if I go back to the exemplar, and I'll just scroll down on this. So as we move past the introduction, we then come on to a paragraph that talks about some of the things the student has done in school. The paragraph that starts with, "My curiosity led me to attending a maths masterclass," blah blah blah. So it may just be that you've attended extra lessons, or that you've taken part in mentoring of other students in the school. It may be that you have taken part in some of the maths projects and fun activities that they've put on, and so it's got to be something really that links to the particular subject. In this particular personal statement, it's all about maths, but that links to that subject. It could be about how you helped out and created something in order for the department to showcase what it does at the prospective parents' evening or something like that. But certainly the second paragraph is really about anything in school, if possible, that you can talk about that shows that you really are passionate about this particular subject or course. Next up, I mean, this has been written as a third paragraph. This could perhaps be joined up with the paragraph above, but I think it's structured quite well. So this really is about how the student has undertaken some activities outside of school to promote their passion for this subject or course. So you can see up until this point, the first three paragraphs, the first one's a little bit on the waffly side, but the first three paragraphs are all absolutely about the course and the subject. Once we get past that third paragraph, it's at that point that the student starts to, in fact, it goes on a bit further to some sort of work experience and stuff that relates to the course and the subject. And then down here there's more stuff on, kind of what the person is like, what are their interests and that kind of stuff. So you can see that paragraph introduction, when you're passionate about the subject or course, how it fits into the sort of wider world, and maybe a quote or two from some theorists that you've read about or you have researched that fit in with your opinions and things like that. So that's the first paragraph. Then, just to remind you, if possible, what you've done in school to promote your passion rather than just picking the subject, and then on to what you've done outside of school, and then finally after that you can start to go on to talk more about yourself as a well-rounded student, hopefully. If I just go back to the UCAS guidelines. Okay, so just to remind you, you've got at the top here the structure, and the first bit is an introduction, then you've got in-school evidence, and then you've got kind of out-of-school evidence of your passion. And what you've got as you read on is each page that follows breaks down each of these headings. So for the introduction, you've got a whole page on how to go about your introduction. Then for the bit on in-school evidence, you've then got a whole page really on in-school evidence. So that's how this document works. So if I just go down further and further, gap years, most of you probably won't be thinking of a gap year, but if you do, there's some information about how you can factor that into your personal statement, some guidance on how to conclude your personal statement with some short examples there. There's a page where you can actually kind of use this as a writing frame for your personal statement if you need to. If we just go on a bit, there's a checklist that you can check after you've attempted your personal statement. Here's a personal statement with some commentary at the bottom about how UCAS viewed this personal statement, and that is that document that is very, very helpful. So I do urge you to look at that. I'll just come back to the exemplars for a second. I will I think I did send these to you, and I know that I did go through these when we did the PSHE session on personal statements, but I will resend some of the exemplars to you. Just be aware that UCAS are really hot on plagiarism. So if you were to use a paragraph or even a couple of sentences direct from someone else's personal statement, they would pick that up. So that would discredit your application to some degree, so make sure that you keep it genuine. First drafts shouldn't be great, but they should show effort, so make sure that you do put every bit of effort in to your personal statements. Just on this Word document that I'll resend you, you've got one personal statement there that is a solid personal statement for maths, you've got one for English, and there's one for geology a bit further down. So do have a look at all of those. Okay, so let's just go back to the timeline. So we are going to be registering for UCAS at some point. The aim is for it to still be in June, and there's been a few bumps in the road because we have been unable to attend many open days from universities due to lockdown clearly, and on top of that we didn't manage to go to the Bedford University trip, so there have been some bumps in the road. Having said that, we should be in a good enough position to, having done lots and lots of research at school, we should be in a position to start having a go at a personal statement. I do suggest that before you attempt your personal statement, you've got provisionally in view the details of the sort of top 2 courses that you want to be, that at this point you would like to be perhaps going forward with. That will help you to make your personal statement specific to the text in front of you, rather than just writing something that's a blanket personal statement that could fit hundreds of different courses. They want to see that your personal statement is fitting, you know, 1 or 2 specific courses from a couple of providers. So I'll leave that with you. Do send me your exemplars as you try them, and I wish you well with that. Hope to see you very, very soon, and have a good rest of the day. Bye bye.